He checked his phone again. Still nothing. No new messages. It had only been 3 minutes, but somehow it felt longer than that. Long enough for his mind to start filling in the silence. He turned the phone over on the table, face down, as if that would make the waiting easier. It didn't. Not even a little. Across the room, the TV was still on. Some show he had already watched before. Voices came and went. Familiar scenes played out, but none of it really reached him. It was just noise, because his attention was somewhere else entirely, still stuck on that last message. Seen. Nothing after that. No reply. No explanation. Just silence. He leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. The kind you take when you're trying to convince yourself things are fine. It wasn't a big deal. At least that's what he told himself. People get busy. People forget. People don't always reply right away. He knew that. Of course he knew that. He'd said the same thing to other people before, many times, and he meant it when he said it. And yet, there was something in his chest that wouldn't settle. Not panic, not anxiety, just a quiet tension. Something subtle, but persistent, like a small weight that refused to move. He stood up, walked slowly into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. The sound of it filling the glass felt louder than usual. He took a sip. Cold. Simple. Grounding for a second. Then his eyes drifted toward the window. He saw his reflection in the dark glass. And for a moment, he didn't recognize the expression on his own face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness either. It was something harder to describe. Something in between. Something that didn't have a clear name. He frowned slightly, as if trying to understand it. But the more he looked, the less certain he felt. He looked away from the glass, almost instinctively, like there was something in that reflection he didn't want to sit with for too long. For years, he had believed he knew exactly who he was. Calm, collected, in control. The kind of person who didn't get shaken easily, who didn't overreact, who didn't let small things get under his skin. He took a certain pride in that, not openly. He wasn't the type to talk about it, but quietly, inside, he believed it. He had built that image over time, not in one moment, but through 100 small decisions, choosing not to react, choosing to stay silent, choosing to let things pass, even when they didn't feel like they passed at all. He was the one who stayed calm when others lost their temper, the one who listened when conversations got heated, the one who could walk away without needing to prove a point, without needing the last word. People notice that. They always do. You're very grounded. Someone had told him once. He remembered that moment clearly. The way he nodded. The way he didn't respond much. But inside, he agreed. Because that's who he believed he was. Someone stable. Someone steady. Someone who didn't lose control. He walked back into the living room. His steps slower now. More deliberate. As if something inside him had already shifted, even if he couldn't explain how. The phone was still on the table, exactly where he had left it. Quiet, unchanged. He picked it up again. Almost without thinking, the screen lit up. Still nothing. This time, he didn't put it down right away. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. He stared at the empty space, where a message could appear. Just one line. That's all it would take. Hey, just checking in. Simple. Casual. Normal. It wouldn't mean anything. At least, that's what he told himself. It wouldn't make him look desperate. It wouldn't change anything. It would just fill the silence. His thumb moved slightly, then stopped. He stared at the screen a little longer, then slowly, he locked the phone, placed it back down. No, he said quietly, almost under his breath. I don't need to do that. But the words didn't land the way he expected them to. They didn't feel solid. They didn't feel certain. He walked back to the couch, sat down, tried to focus on the TV again, but the images didn't register. The voices blurred together. It was like watching something without actually seeing it, because his mind was already somewhere else. replaying the last conversation. Every word, every pause, every detail. Had he said something wrong? He went through it again, slower this time, looking for something he might have missed. Something subtle, something small, but nothing stood out. Everything had felt normal, easy, even good. So why the silence? He shifted slightly in his seat, crossed his arms, then uncrossed them, adjusted his posture, looked at the phone again. It hadn't moved, still quiet, still empty. Something in his chest tightened, just a little, but enough to notice. And that's when it changed, because it wasn't just about the message anymore. It had become something else, something deeper, something harder to ignore. A question, not about her, not really, about himself. Why did this matter so much? He had been here before. Not this exact situation, but something close to it. People drift, conversations fade, things end quietly, without explanation. It happens. It's normal. At least, that's what he had always believed. And for the most part, he had lived that way, detached, unbothered, unaffected, or at least that's what it looked like from the outside. And yet, this time felt different. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in a way he couldn't ignore. A subtle shift, from calm to something slightly unstable, from certainty to something less defined. He stood up again, walked toward the window, looked outside. The street was quiet. A few cars passed by, headlights moving slowly through the dark. Nothing unusual. Everything looked exactly the same as always. Everything was normal, except him. He noticed it now, more clearly than before. His breathing felt slightly off, not heavy, not strained, just uneven. His thoughts moved faster, looping, repeating, returning to the same place again and again. And that word, control, stayed with him longer than the others, because that was the thing he had always been most certain about. Control. He had built his entire identity around it, not reacting too quickly, not showing too much, not needing too much, being fine. Even when things weren't fine, especially when things weren't fine. He turned away from the window, walked back slowly, sat down again, but this time, he didn't turn the TV back on. He didn't reach for the phone. He didn't distract himself. He just sat there, in the silence, letting it be there. And for the first time in a long time, he started watching his own thoughts, without trying to stop them. They kept circling. The same thoughts, the same questions, coming back, over and over again. Why does this matter so much? He didn't have a clear answer. Not something he could explain. Just fragments. Small pieces that didn't fully connect. Maybe he liked her more than he had admitted. Maybe he cared more than he had shown. Maybe he wasn't as detached as he had always believed. That thought stayed longer than the others. It didn't pass quickly. It didn't fade. Because it didn't feel comfortable. It didn't fit the image, the version of himself he had spent years building. The calm one. The controlled one, the one who doesn't get affected. And yet, sitting there now, that version felt incomplete. Not entirely false, but not entirely true either. He reached for his phone again, slower this time, more aware of the movement. He unlocked it, opened the chat. The message was still there. Seen, nothing else, no change. He stared at it, not expecting anything now, just looking. Then he locked the phone again, placed it down, gently, and this time, he didn't try to explain anything away, because something had already shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to notice, enough to feel. The version of himself he trusted was starting to feel less certain, less stable than he thought, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel in control. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands loosely clasped together, then tighter, then loosened again. There was a moment where he almost laughed, a quiet, almost invisible reaction, not because anything was funny, but because it felt strange. How something so small a delayed reply, a silent screen could create this much movement inside him. He had seen this before in other people. He remembered watching it from the outside, the checking, the waiting, the overthinking, the quiet impatience, and he never really understood it. Why do they care so much? He had once asked a friend. He could still hear the tone of his own voice, calm, detached, almost certain. Now, sitting there, he didn't have that question anymore because he could feel it, not as an idea, not as something abstract, but as something physical. A tension that didn't ask for permission, that didn't wait to be understood. It was just there. He stood up again, walked toward the kitchen, stopped halfway, turned back, sat down, picked up the phone, unlocked it, locked it again. The pattern was obvious now, clear, repetitive, almost mechanical, and still, he kept doing it. That was the part that unsettled him the most. Not the waiting, not the silence, but the fact that he wasn't stopping himself. He had always believed that awareness was enough, that once you saw something clearly, you could step out of it. But this felt different. He could see it clearly, precisely, and still he was inside it, as if awareness wasn't control, as if it was just watching. He leaned back slowly, let his head rest against the wall, closed his eyes for a moment, and that's when a memory surfaced. Not forced, not searched for, just there. He was younger, less controlled, more reactive. Someone had said something to him, dismissive, careless, and he reacted immediately, sharply. He raised his voice, said things he didn't mean, things he couldn't take back. The moment passed, but the feeling stayed. Not anger, not even regret. Something deeper, a kind of loss. Not of the situation, but of himself. I lost control. He remembered thinking that, clearly. And from that moment on, he made a quiet decision. He wouldn't let that happen again. So he changed, slowly, quietly. He started holding back, observing more, reacting less, creating distance between himself and what he felt. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel safe. Enough to feel stable. Enough to believe he was in control. And for a long time, that worked. Or at least, it seemed like it did. Until now. Because sitting there, in the silence, with nothing happening, nothing changing, nothing to fix, he felt something break through that distance. Not suddenly, not violently, but steadily. Like something that had always been there, just waiting. His phone lit up, a small sound, a brief vibration. His body reacted instantly, before his mind had time to catch up. He reached for it, unlocked it, a notification, but not from her, something else. Unimportant, irrelevant. He stared at it for a second, then closed it. And that's when he noticed something. Not the disappointment, not the silence, but the reaction itself. How fast it came, how automatic it was, how little space there was between stimulus and response. That moment stayed with him, because it didn't match the version of himself he believed in. The calm one, the controlled one. That version would have waited, would have stayed composed, would have remained untouched. But that's not what happened, and the gap between those two versions felt uncomfortable, not because one was better, but because one felt real, and the other felt like something he had been maintaining. He opened his eyes slowly. The room looked the same. Nothing had changed, and yet something clearly had. He picked up the phone again, not out of urgency, not out of need, just to look. The screen lit up, still the same. Still silent. He didn't react, not the way he had before. He watched the thought arise and pass, watched the urge appear and fade. And for a brief moment, there was space, a small gap, between what he felt and what he did. And in that gap, something became clear. What exactly am I trying to control? He didn't answer it immediately. He didn't need to, because the question itself was already doing something. It was shifting the way he saw it. The checking, the waiting, the tension. It wasn't really about the message. Not entirely. It was about something underneath. A need, not just for a reply, but for certainty, for reassurance, for something solid, in a moment that felt uncertain. And slowly, he started to see it. His sense of control had never really been about control. It had been about conditions, about things going the way he expected, about staying within what felt manageable. But the moment something stepped outside of that, the feeling disappeared, and what remained was uncertainty. He leaned back, let that settle, didn't try to fix it, didn't try to resolve it, just saw it. And then something unexpected happened. He smiled, very slightly, not because he felt better, not because anything had changed, but because he understood something simple, clear, undeniable. He was never really in control. He was just used to situations where control felt possible. And now, in a moment where it wasn't, he could finally see the difference. He placed the phone down, without hesitation, without overthinking. There was nothing left to manage, nothing left to chase, nothing left to fix. And strangely, that didn't feel like loss. It felt lighter, not because he got what he wanted, but because he stopped trying to control what he couldn't. He stood up slowly, walked toward the window, looked outside again. The same quiet street, the same distant lights, everything exactly as it was before. And yet, he wasn't. Not dramatically, not completely, just slightly different, less certain, but also less tense. He looked at his reflection again, and this time, he didn't try to understand it, didn't try to label it, didn't try to fix it. He just saw it as it was. And for the first time in a long time, there was no version of himself to maintain, no image to protect, no role to play, just presence. Quiet, uncertain, but real. The phone stayed on the table behind him, still silent, still unchanged. And for once, he didn't turn back, because whatever he had been waiting for was no longer there. Not in the way he thought. He stood there for a while, doing nothing, thinking nothing, just being. And somewhere in that stillness, something became clear. He had spent so much time trying to be in control that he never noticed how little control he actually had. Not over people, not over timing, not over how things unfold, and not even over himself. His reactions came before his decisions. His feelings appeared before his understanding. And all he had been doing was adjusting around them, managing them, calling that control. But it wasn't. It was distance, from uncertainty, from discomfort, from what was actually happening inside him. And once he saw that, really saw it, something changed. Not outside, but inside, quietly. And when he saw that, he didn't become better. He didn't become stronger. He didn't suddenly have answers. He just couldn't pretend anymore. And maybe that's the part most people never reach. Not the moment they lose control, but the moment they realize they never had it. And once you see that, even briefly, you don't go back the same way. You still live your life. You still check your phone. You still wait. You still wonder. But something underneath is different. You don't hold on as tightly. You don't chase as quickly. You don't try to force meaning out of every silence. You just notice. And sometimes that's enough. The kind of enough that doesn't fix everything, but quietly changes how everything feels. And maybe that's all it was ever meant to do. The room stayed quiet. The phone stayed silent. And for the first time that night, it didn't matter. Not because something outside had changed, but because he finally saw it was never really there to control.